Welcome to the Age is Irrelevant podcast with your host, Helen Fritsch. Helen is a 60-plus, lifelong competitive athlete, flight attendant, published fitness model, writer, IFBB Bodybuilding Pro, and certified wine specialist who believes that your age is irrelevant to pursue goals, dreams, and desires. Are you a woman in her 40s, 50s, 60s, and beyond who still has a burning desire to pursue a dream or a passion? Are you thinking about starting a new chapter in your life, but you're hesitant, thinking that you might be too old or just don't know where to begin? The Age is Irrelevant podcast is a podcast devoted to women who want to defy the odds, smash barriers, and redefine happiness and success after 40. It's time to make a difference. There is no need to dread blowing out that added birthday candle every year. A new movement is slowly taking momentum, where being over the hill just isn't relevant anymore. Age labels are being thrown out the window, and women are rediscovering the strength within themselves to make a difference, not only within their own lives, but also touching and inspiring the lives of other women. Join Helen as she and her guests discuss all aspects of aging after 40 and how to make the aging process and those twilight years more rewarding, exciting, and fun.
Hello and welcome to the Age is Irrelevant podcast. I'm your host, Helen Fritsch, and this is episode 120. Today is a very special treat, at least for me. I am re-releasing my podcast interview done 6 years ago with the legendary Sandy Williamson. Now, for those of you who don't know Sandy, she is a retired nurse, an international head judge for the IFBB, NPC, Pro, and Amateur Bodybuilding League Federations. She travels the world judging regional, national, and international bodybuilding shows on a weekly basis during the bodybuilding show season. And she recently was just awarded the first ever Jim Manion Lifetime Achievement Award for her tireless commitment to bodybuilding for the last 50 years. In the interview, we talk about her life growing up as a sedentary child, what got her interested in bodybuilding and working out, and how she became a bodybuilding judge. We also discuss her life on the road, how she stays on track with her fitness routine and diet, her passion for nursing and bodybuilding, and if women just make that initial effort to start somewhere in fitness, the results will come. 12 years ago, I stepped on stage for the very first time to compete in a bodybuilding show. Little did I know it would have such a huge impact on my life. Not only did I make lifelong friends, but I also met some amazing women in the NPC and IFBB Leagues who were judges who made lasting impressions on me. And one of those people was Sandy Williamson. I thought it would be very fitting to bring this podcast conversation back so all athletes, seasoned and new, could get to know Sandy a little bit better. Congratulations, Sandy, on receiving your well-deserved Lifetime Achievement Award. What an incredible legacy you continue to leave behind. Thank you for your countless times that you've looked over us, you've impacted us, including the day that I won my pro card, and the love that you have poured into this sport for decades. If you're a veteran, a novice, an amateur, or a pro bodybuilder, you will love Sandy's life story and how she found her way to bodybuilding world. This episode is much more than just a podcast. It's a tribute to a woman who has inspired generations. I really think you'll enjoy this very candid interview. And here we go. Hi, Sandy. Welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you very much for having me.
Well, I'm so glad that we were able to get our schedules in sync for this interview. I know that you are by far probably the one person that is on the road and probably flies just as much as I do on a weekly basis.
Yeah. Last year I actually doubled. Last year I flew over 230,000 miles.
Oh my word, that's unbelievable.
Yes. For me, it was a lot. Yeah, that was double what normally I was flying up to last year.
That's incredible. Mm-hmm. So for my listeners, I just want to do a brief introduction. I am speaking to Sandy Williamson. Now, Sandy is 67 years old. She is a registered nurse by trade and recently retired from that profession. But how I know Sandy is she is
the head judge for two bodybuilding federations, one being the IFBB, which stands for the International Federation of Bodybuilding, which is a pro league, and then the NPC, which is the National Physique Committee Bodybuilding Federation, which is an amateur league. And she travels the world on a weekly basis, judging professional and amateur bodybuilding shows. But before we get into that, I want to go back and I want to talk about your childhood and your upbringing. So where were you born and where'd you grow up?
Okay, well, I was actually born in Detroit, Michigan. My dad worked for a Ford company at the time. And then he actually moved us, just because of his job, he moved us actually to Reading, Pennsylvania when I was 12. So even though I spent my early childhood in Michigan, I really spent most of my life in Reading, Pennsylvania. And I have 5 brothers and sisters, and they are all still, live in the Reading, Reading area or surrounding area.
That's awesome. So we were just talking earlier before we went on air that I too have relatives in Reading, Pennsylvania. So it's definitely a small world. So now, were you active as a child?
No, not at all. But I had good grades. I was a studier. I was a studier and a reader.
Okay.
I did no physical activity at all until I actually, I did a little bit in the end of high school, but I basically didn't do anything until once I got out of nursing school. Okay.
And so what made you decide to pursue nursing?
Oh, you know what? It's just, that was something that I wanted to be all my life. I don't know where it actually came from. My mom was diagnosed very young. She was only in her 20s with MS. And so pretty much by the time I was, 12, 13 years old, she was having trouble walking and couldn't really get around. And there were 6 of us. I was the oldest of the 6. So it just always seemed like I was always taking care of people, most of my life. And something I really enjoyed. Like I never thought about what I was going to do. I started, volunteering at the local hospital, when I was still in high school and stuff. And so, nursing was always just something for some reason that I always wanted to pursue.
Okay. So you said in your bio too, that your early childhood, that you were overweight. So let's talk about that. And then once you get out of school, it kind of reversed.
I think again, back then nutrition wasn't in parents' minds like it is, today. And, my mom cooked with lard. My mom fried a lot of food, and so, and I wasn't active, where all my other sisters and brothers were very active. So nobody else was heavy in my family. But by the time I was in 8th grade, I was well over 200 pounds, probably 220, I think was the last time I got weighed in at. And like I said, I just was not physically active. I never was, growing up. And so I was just, I was just very heavy, eating the same diet that everybody else in my family ate. But, for them, they were, cheerleaders, they were hockey, they were, they played a lot of different sports.
Right. So you went to nursing school, and right after graduation, and I just want to mention too that you graduated first in your class.
See, I said I was a good studier. That's right. What I was good at. That's what I was good at.
So I'm guessing that it was a 3-year program. So you're probably around 20 years old when you graduated then?
Yep. I was 21 when I graduated. Yep.
Okay. And then you drastically lost a lot of weight.
Yeah, I actually I started to lose it at the very end of during my senior year, because I actually was going to be my future husband when I was as a senior. And so when I went to nursing school, it just continued. And when I graduated from nursing, I'm 5'7". Now I'm a little bit shorter as I get older, but I was 5'7" at the time. And I graduated at 72 pounds.
Wow. That's extreme.
It's a huge shape. You look at, I look like, somebody that was starving, and I was, you know what I mean? I definitely was. Unfortunately at that time they did, anorexia wasn't even a syndrome or a disease yet. So because I was so, thin at my height, they thought I had leukemia.
Oh, wow.
So, so they were doing a lot of tests, for leukemia, which, all came back negative. And again, I always believe things happen for a reason. And they gave me a choice of 3 doctors, because even though Reading is a very small community, they have a very good hospital, running community hospitals where I went to, to nursing school. Because even back then they had both a nursing and a physician, a physician's program. And now they're almost 1,000 beds, and they have 8 disciplines that that they have schools for there. And I was fortunate enough that one of the internal medicine female doctors that I went to had just been to a seminar in Philadelphia that was talking about this disorder that they were starting to see in young women, both, late teens and early 20s. And that's when they came, it was that, called anorexia. And that's what she said, I think this is what you have, Sandy, because it was it was either a year before, a couple of years, right around when Karen Carpenter died.
Oh,
gosh.
Yeah.
Because that's basically what she died from.
Right.
Her potassium dropped so low that, it caused her heart to fibrillate, and she passed away. And so I think it was actually her death probably that brought, it to the forefront. And it actually became known that it was a medical, issue that was, they were starting to see in a lot of young women at the time.
Right, right. So it sounds like too that at this time you started to exercise.
Yes, I did, because my sisters were all at that time. I'm the oldest, so but my sisters that are next to me, they also had graduated by this time from high school. They didn't go to college, and they were all meeting to go like run at a track and stuff. And I wanted to be part of it because I didn't want them to go. We're very close. I didn't want them to go without me. So I started going to the track with them just to be part of it. I wasn't planning on running or anything, and one thing led to another. And next thing I knew, I was running marathons.
That's absolutely incredible.
Yeah. Well, you can see my family's very competitive, and you can actually see that if you think about, I was upset with myself because I graduated 5th from high school. And so I made sure I graduated 1st from nursing. So we're very competitive no matter what type of activity we're looking at and stuff. So it was the same thing. Once I started to run, it was like, okay, I can go a little bit farther. I can, that type of thing.
Right. And then the next thing you know, you're into it 100%.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
So back then in the 70s, which I'm very familiar with myself, you talked about that there was like no co-ed, as far as gyms were concerned.
Oh, not at all. Because at that time, at least not in Reading, there was not. And I was going to a women's World Health Spa, and my ex-husband was also he's an ex-football player, shot put, so he was into powerlifting. And I would come home all excited because I would say, like, I did 100 reps with 10 pounds with the leg press. And he would be like looking at me going, why the heck would anybody do 100 reps with 10? That's the most ridiculous. And so he's the first one that kind of started talking to me about weights and stuff. And, again, even today, sometimes I talk to women and they have a misconception that if you pick up a weight, you're going to get bulky. And, and I did. I thought, why would I want to do less reps? Because otherwise they would tell me at the spa that I'm going to be, my muscles are going to grow really big and stuff. And, I'm not going to look like I want them. And so yeah, he's actually the first person that actually like tried to tell me about the difference between, weight training and actually, putting some muscle on for women. But, as husbands and wives do sometime, I was definitely not going to listen to him. Nope. I knew better. And the people at my health spa, they knew better. And again, things happen, again, like I say, things happen for a reason. And he came home one day and he said to me, did I want to go to Philadelphia to see a women's bodybuilding show? And I was like, no, I have no desire to see women bodybuilders. And because again, I had an image in my mind that wasn't at all what I wanted to, what I was trying to look like, you know what I mean?
Right.
And stuff. But I'm very social. So it was like, oh yeah, but it's a weekend. We can go listen to all these seminars. And I was like, that's a weekend away. I don't care. I'll go look at anything. I don't care. But I had no interest in it at all. And it was actually turned out to be the first ever Miss Olympia, promoted by George Snyder in 1980 in Philadelphia. And it was I was just telling somebody this past weekend, it was actually a dinner theater. And so when I saw these women on stage, and then they mingled afterwards. And I'm telling you, when Rachel McLish walked by me and she looked like she was in a size 2 jean or a size 1 jean, it was over. I was signing up at the Y on that Monday morning.
Wow. That's unbelievable. Yeah. She was one of my favorites, also her and Corey Everson and.
Oh, Corey, I still know. I mean, to Corey today, we still talk, and just amazing. Yes. Amazing women that have, blazed that trail for a lot of other women.
Oh yeah, I couldn't wait every month to get the latest magazine to flip through to see them. And in being an athlete, you know, in high school myself, and seeing the football players and the basketball players go to the weight room, and I always thought, oh, you know, I'd like to lift weights, but I can't go in there. I can't go in there. You know, it was just one of those things that you just didn't do back then.
No. Oh, not at all, because it's only been really in the last 10, 15 years that they've really incorporated weight training for any of the women's sports in the high schools. Because like I said, I have my niece's kid, daughter is in college now for soccer. And it wasn't, I want to say it wasn't till she was in ninth grade that any of the coaches even talked about, you know what I mean? And I know even Jim Mannion's granddaughter, Cassie, same thing. It was actually, her father, JM, that actually started her on a weight training program to help her soccer, and, she ended up with the soccer for college also. But it's not like it wasn't just recently. It's not like this is something that happened 50 years ago or 100 years ago. This just happened recently, a big change over in our lives. Yes.
And you were instrumental too, because you went to the Y, but you weren't allowed in the weight room. So
no, I could join the Y, because at that time, and I'm assuming they still do. They had a YMCA, a YWCA, and we could join the YM, because my ex-husband, that's where he was lifting, so I was going to join with him. But then once I joined, I didn't realize though that women were not allowed in the weight room, and I just was fortunate again, another girl that was trying to lift also in the weight room. We petitioned, but it took somewhere like 3-6 months till we finally got the approval that we could, because it had to go, the Y's a big corporation, so it had to go through the up the ladder about trying to change a rule. And but it was about 3 or 6 months that we finally were allowed to work out in the weight room.
And from that working out in the weight room, is that what got you motivated to want to enter a bodybuilding show?
Yeah, it was kind of like, well, it actually was, I think, more probably my ex-husband, because I was, again, in the beginning, especially because I never came from an active background. So and again, when I talk about I put on muscle, you know what I look like, Helen. So, okay, I never got big. But I did put on some muscle, quickly initially. And being that I was already lean, because I was coming off being anorexic, and I was still running it, I was still running at the time. And I had already by that time started to teach aerobics and stuff. So I was doing a lot of cardio activities anyway. So I was, and that's probably part of the reason that I never really did well on the competing side is because I didn't know enough, that I actually had to gain some weight, to put some muscle on, you know what I mean? Type thing. So yeah, even though I went to every seminar I could find, I waited for every magazine to come in the mail to see what the articles were and stuff. I just didn't have anybody in our area that could really help me as a female. But it was my ex-husband is the one that, that talked me into entering my first show. And again, lo and behold, I entered. Again, I don't know what it was called, because I can't remember if it was actually called the Pittsburgh Championships, but it was in April, and it was in Pittsburgh, and it was at Soldiers and Sailors, the same place I go to judge the Pittsburgh every year. But that was actually the first show that I ever did in my life.
Wow. And once you did that first show, I mean, did it compel you to continue to compete?
Oh, heck yeah. Oh my God. Absolutely. That's why I laugh when, women always, some, girls will say to me that it's just something on their bucket list. They're going to do one show, and stuff with somebody from their gym, talk to them into competing. And I always laugh when I talk to them afterwards, and they're like, oh my God, I'm definitely doing another show. Where's the next show? How can I find out where another show is, and stuff. So it makes me laugh, because that's exactly how I was. I did 18 shows, probably 18 shows. And I think it was just from like 81 to 84. So probably in a 3-year span.
Oh my word.
Yeah. As I said, I didn't know enough back then. And, so obviously I never really did a lot of changing, because I never took enough time off, you know what I mean, to make the changes that I needed to make. But at the same time, I met a girl named Candy Census, and I don't know if you remember her. She was one of the first, again, that first group of women bodybuilders, but she's actually the one that, if I wouldn't have known her, I would not be sitting here talking to you, because she was starting to judge for what the women's organization, because the NPC started as a male organization. and the women's counterpart was the AFWB, the American Federation of Women Bodybuilders. And so she was actually judging for them. So she actually was from Kutztown. So, that's in our, our home area. So
Right.
she started to talk to me about, there were no women on any of the local judging panels and would I be interested, and I was like, yeah, because maybe it'll help me, from an athlete standpoint to see things from the other side. And once I started judging, I knew I didn't belong on that side. I knew I didn't belong on the competition side of the stage. I didn't have the structure. And so I started to judge, and the more I judged, I fell in love with the judging. I never mind sitting at a show. I don't care if it's 2 hours, 10 hours. I love judging. I love the athletes that I've met through it and stuff, but she's the one that got me started. And then unfortunately she, in 1983, she did the Olympia was up in Toronto and, Montreal. And so we went up to watch her and stuff. And then in 84 or 85, she was diagnosed with aggressive breast CA. And so by that time I was helping her judge a lot. So then she asked me if I would take over the judging for the women's organization while she started to go through treatment, but then she stopped treatment and actually passed away a couple of years later at 31 years old.
Oh,
Yeah. And, but yeah, so, that's how I got. And at the same time I want to say 83 is when the NPC and the AFWB merged. And so, like I said, she was helping with the judging at that time with, for the NPC, because it all got merged together. And then in 85, our first women's chairperson was May Malika. And a year later, her and her husband or boyfriend at the time, I can't remember, Ricky Wayne, they went to one of the Caribbean islands because he started a magazine and stuff out there. So she upped and left. And, Jim, I didn't really know Jim Anion at the time, but he called and asked me if I'd be, because at that time you could fly on somebody else's ticket. And she was supposed to be going with a girl from California, Kathy Palio, to Singapore for the Women's World Championships. And so Jim asked me if I would be willing to go with Kathy. So I flew over. That was my first time ever overseas. I flew to Singapore with Kathy, and we did the Women's World Championships. When I came back, Jim asked me if I would want to be the women's chairperson, and I said to him, "Yeah, nope, can't do that." I said, I'm married. I'm a full-time nursing. And back then we didn't have 12 hours of nursing. You have to remember that we were just 8-hour shifts. So I was working 5 days a week, and you work weekends. But I said I would help out while he tried to find somebody. And we all know how that worked. Yes, we all know how that worked. That worked out. But I did. I said I would help out just because even when they asked me to start judging, I said can only be very infrequently, because I'm married and I have a full-time job and stuff. And and here I am 30 some years later.
wow, that's incredible. So you were working full time, as a nurse during the week, and then I guess on weekends, you were flying around, judging. So that's
But back then we didn't. Don't get me wrong. I did all the world championships probably from 86 on. Both the male and the female, but that was really the only time that we kind of did international. There was a couple invitationals that I'd done in outside of London. I also did a couple invitationals with the athletes in Japan, Tokyo, a couple times in the very late 80s, early 90s. But it was just really the two main shows were the international shows were the two world championships. And even in our country, even in domestically, I judge locally. I did a lot of stuff I judged a lot for John Kemper. He was the district chairman, of New Jersey. So I was doing a lot in Pennsylvania and a lot in New Jersey, and then our national shows, So it really wasn't, it was nothing like, you see now. Pennsylvania and the East Coast, eastern part of Pennsylvania, we had maybe 4 shows a year, 5 shows a year. In all of eastern Pennsylvania, I'm talking up in the Poconos, down in Phil, you know what I mean? So you didn't have, it's nothing like, it's not anywhere near the numbers that, that you see now.
Oh yeah. Yeah. If you want to do a show, there's a show somewhere, every single weekend,
That's why I tell athletes all the time, they can pick and choose where they want to go. You know what I mean? And they should. I said that, there are so many opportunities now open to athletes, both domestically and internationally. But yeah, so I travel, but nothing nothing like even close to what I do now. And by the time I moved out here and the sport started to grow, I was, nursing had already switched to a 3 12-hour shift. If it wouldn't have, I would never be here. Another thing, because I would never have given up my, I love nursing. I would have never given up my nursing, for the bodybuilding. So I would never have been able to do what I did, but with only working 3 12s a week and, having a flexible schedule at the hospital, you know what I mean? We pretty much made, and again, we had to work so many weekends and stuff. But it was, it was easy for me as long as I worked all the holidays and stuff, people would change with me all the time, which allowed me to, to travel then.
Right, right. So when you're on the road, I mean, like, you like me, I mean, I'm a flight attendant. I'm on the road all the time too. Let's talk about your workouts and your diet. I mean, you look amazing. So how do you stay in shape?
If we start prejudging it at 8 o'clock, I'm up at 4. If we start prejudging at 9, I'm up at 5. I'm always up 4 hours before I have to be at the venue, because I always do cardio, just because as I'm getting older, it's harder and harder. And I'm a more pleasant person during the day when I do my cardio in the morning. I tell athletes all the time, you definitely do not want me judging you if I've not done cardio in the morning. I'm a much happier person. And most of the gyms now, I mean, most of the hotels, they have small gyms. So I make use out of, if it's just small dumbbells or just a couple machines, I do whatever I can do. And, when I'm home, then I do my full workouts and stuff. But I always, and again, you have to know the same. I mean, you have to feel the same way. If there's a will, there's a way. Mm-hmm. And I do. I mean, once in a while, I'll go outside the hotel if I can't find anything in the hotel to look for a gym close by. And, now today's day and age, there's gyms everywhere. Mm-hmm. But most of the time, a lot of the fitness centers have, at least a small amount of dumbbells, a small amount of machines. And I can always fit in some kind of workout, when I'm on the road, is from a weight training perspective.
Right, right. And so what about diet? Do you bring food with you or
all the time?
Yeah.
All the time. I mean, I make my own protein bars and stuff. So, and I bring my protein drinks. And, I mean, and again, no matter where you go, every hotel makes chicken, mm-hmm. So you order chicken, you order salad, you order chicken, you order vegetables. It's not like, and people will say that, like, oh, we're going out to eat. Don't you want to splurge tonight? No, you just got done competing. I am on the road every weekend. And no, I just eat the same way when I'm on the road as if I'm home cooking it myself.
Well, and that's why, you stay in shape, and that's why you look the way that you look too, so, I get that. I get people ask me that all the time, and you have to have dedication, and you have to have persistence, and, you have to make it a priority. And a lot of it's mindset too. I mean, if you have a negative mindset, or if you don't believe in yourself that you can do it, then that's going to be detrimental to your, progress too.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think this is where the sport has done besides other things, this is one of the areas I think the sport has done so much for me, because I have met so many amazing women that, like, hold down. I can remember somebody, and it's unfortunate I can't remember her name, but I was at one of the greater Gulf State shows, and she was just turned IFBB pro. This maybe 6-7 years ago. The mother of 4, worked full time because she worked for one of the medical companies. So her and I started talking, and she was just starting her own company because she had just gone through chemo.
Oh, wow.
And yet she was on stage. So those are the kind of stories you hear and you go like, I can't get myself to the gym right now today. How, I've met so many women that hold down jobs, that have 3 and 4 kids, and just do, I mean, there's so many women out there that do this all the time. And it's meeting and talking to those women that are my motivation.
Well, also too, it's just like, you were saying about this woman, and even, with like, health issues come up, I think I've told you before that I have leukemia. So, mm-hmm. That just motivates me to stay on this track because, clean living and healthy lifestyle is helping me keep this, cancer at bay. Which,
yes, no, absolutely. Because my husband, he owns Spectrum Fitness Productions, and we just did a show in the Portland Classic up in Portland. And one of the women that competed in figure, I believe, she, or might have been bikini, but she contacted us to find out if she had to wear heels. And I'm like, no, because we've had women that, can't wear really heels, or they wear wedges because they have a disability. And she has MS. And,
wow.
Yep, a registered nurse, MS. And again, she talked about it was actually starting to go to the gym that has helped her get in remission. And you know what I mean, and stuff. So it's like you hear stories like that and you go like, okay, we can all make time no matter what's going on in our life. If it's really a priority, you can make it happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're right. You're right. So while we're on that subject, so let's talk about self-care. I mean, where should, in your opinion, women start if they want to improve their fitness? I mean, if they just, this was all totally new to them, but they wanted to get into something, what would you recommend?
You know what? Okay, I know sometimes a lot of the gyms are very intimidating to women. And I don't know if a lot of the curves are still open, but I tell women about going to, I know, is it the 24-hour fitness, I think, that has silver sneakers.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a lot of, because, you were talking about that, you market more to older women. There's so many senior programs out there locally in your area. Even when I did my master's here in Riverside, I didn't realize that there's a huge senior center near me. And so I did part of my master's over there, and there's volleyball and outside tennis and a pool. And unfortunately, when I talk to, people in the area, they don't even realize that it's there. So that my first thing would be like, really look, like do some investigation in your own area to see what's available. Because if you don't want to really, some people, like I said, some women do feel very intimidated going, to, a regular gym the first time when they've never done anything like that before.
Mm-hmm.
And you can find programs that are mostly geared to older women, and start there. And, it'll get you started, and it'll give you that, I think initially going will give you that confidence, and then you'll start branching out.
No, I agree with that too. And I'm a big proponent of, once you get into that you need to surround yourself with like-minded people, because that's just going to empower you and help raise you up. Because all of us, just like you said, if you don't get your cardio in, you're going to be in a bad mood. Well, I mean, I'm the same way. I mean, I get moody if I don't get my workouts in, or if, certain things happen. So I need to have people surround me that, if I can reach out to them, they'll be like, hey, snap out of it,
Well, no, you know what though? And I think that's one of the reasons that the teams are so big now in our sport, because, when I first started, like, you and I talked about, I was waiting for the magazines to come in the mail. There was nobody else in my area that competed as far as, as a female and stuff. And even the guys at my gym, some competed, but it was still not these huge numbers. So I felt like I was all by myself. So when I got the magazines and stuff and realized like Rachel did this, or Aubrey Pollock did this, or whoever it was, it made me feel like closer to the sport. So I think with the teams, and now with social media, women are able to connect with other women in different parts of the country. And I have women all the time that will say to me, oh my God, I got to a plateau, Sandy, and I was not getting over it. And then, you know what? So-and-so from Maryland contacted me, and she was already up. And I'm like, okay, I'm getting my butt to the gym and stuff. Because I think that support group, when you realize that other people are there for you and are doing the same thing, you just don't feel like you're that island anymore.
Mm-hmm. Oh, you hit the nail on the head. I love that simile with the island, because you're 100% correct. I agree with that 100%. 100%. And just like we said too, earlier, it's all about your mindset. And if you're in a negative mindset, and then you rally around people who can help you, get out of that mindset and at least get you, because I mean, how many times have you knew that you had to get up and you're like, I don't want to go.
Oh my God.
I've driven to the gym before, looked at it, and then pulled out and driven away.
So,
So,
you know what, and I've done the same thing. My sister and I used to run together in the morning, and oh my God, I bet you for 10 years straight, every year, every morning, her husband worked at a steel mill, so did my ex-husband, and the minute they left, we'd go out and run together, and every couple of months, I'd show up at her door, and we'd look at each other, and we'd go, diner, coffee, no running.
yeah, no, yeah. Yeah.
But you have to, but see, but that's another thing I tell women all the time. You have to allow yourself, just like when you eat healthy and all of a sudden you want one cheat meal. That's fine. That's part of life. It's when you let that get you down and let you think like you failed because you ate something that you really didn't, thought you shouldn't eat or wasn't healthy for you. Mm-hmm. We're all going to do that.
Yeah.
It's if the biggest part of your nutrition is healthy, then that's fine. Having that cheat meal every once in a while is good for your body and stuff, and it should not play, psychologically play with your head.
Yeah, no. And I think that I think with us being, athletes in that realm, when you're prepping for a show, especially, I've got my blinders on, but then when the show's over, I still will eat, pretty well. But if I do want to have chocolate or ice cream or a glass of wine, I do it. And
mm-hmm.
it's kind of funny, and I'm sure you might get this too, is that sometimes people will look at me and they're like, are you really going to eat that? And I'm like, oh, hell yeah. I'm like, I'm just like you, but I just, I can flip the switch when I need to.
But the thing is, 90% of the time you eat healthy, you eat clean.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that you don't have this, that you don't like the same things that I get that all the time. Even for me, just because I'm a big chicken eater, I'm not as big as a seafood eater, but I'm a big chicken eater. And if I go out, I just did this when I was in Japan, I ordered steak, because it just seemed like it was going to be the cleanest on the menu. I thought everybody at the table with me was going to have a heart attack, because I don't eat beef. And they were like, look at me, and they go, I can't believe you're eating beef. And I'm like, I love steak. I grew up on steak, but we have a big cardiovascular history in my family. The men have all died of heart attacks, and most of the women have died of strokes. I said, so I just early on, once I started to get, with better nutrition and stuff, I just kind of, got away from eating the beef just because of my, of my genetics and stuff. But man, give me a steak. I could eat a steak every day of the week if,
mm-hmm.
if I knew it would be okay for me. But like I said, you have to know your own, what your genetics and what your history, your DNA is. But, oh yeah.
Right. So right now at 67, are you like struggling with anything now as far as fitness goes, or are you pretty happy where you're at?
Yeah, I do wish that I was I mean, like I said, I work out all the time. I'm fortunate enough, my husband owned a gym, so we have a freestanding gym on my property because we live on a ranch. And so I don't have to go far to work out. But I wished I pushed a little more, I think, you know what I mean, in trying to add a little bit more muscle back on, because I've lost some with all the travel and with just, not competing anymore. So that's probably the biggest, I mean, if I had a wish, and sometimes I, that sometimes I wished I did a little bit more and a little bit better. I do enough to maintain my muscle mass, but I know I should work to put a little bit more on, because like I said, at 67, I'm much more healthier than I ever was when I was 20.
Right. Oh no, same here. I'm in the best shape of my life, and it just, it just keeps getting better. So I'm like, when people start, complaining to me about that, I'm just like, no.
Well, no, and it's funny. Well, it's funny because at the Portland show this past weekend, there was a lady behind the judges that I was talking to. Her son was in the show, and she said to me something about he was trying to get her, and you could tell. She told me she was 62. I think she said she looked like she was not over 50. She looked amazing, but she said about getting into the gym at her age and stuff. Mm. And so I actually showed her, because I have my iPad there. I actually showed her some of our, because that to me is the biggest the group of athletes that amaze me the most is when I go to the Masters Nationals.
Mm-hmm.
The quality of the women at our Masters Nationals never ceases to amaze me. When I'm judging with a 24-year-old judge that looks to me and says, we're judging like either the 50 or 55 women for the age groups, the bikini or the figure, and a 24-year-old looks at me and goes, "Are you sure they checked their IDs backstage, Sandy?" But that to me is the telling thing, because when you're 24, anybody over 30 is old.
Yeah.
And when you have a young guy at 24, just amazed at how awesome these 50 or 55-year-old women look.
Mm-hmm.
That to me, it can't get any better than that.
I know. Competition is definitely fierce at our age. That's for sure.
Continually, every year, I go back, because me, I do the email critiques and stuff, and I'll go back and look at like some of the winners from 3 and 4 years ago, and what the winners of those the 45, 50, 55-year-old look now. And in fact, if I'm not mistaken, it was the 60-year-old figure girls, the women this year in Pittsburgh, blew my mind.
Mm.
It was just amazing to see women in their early 60s that looked like these women did. It was really incredible. You don't need plastic surgery. You just need to go to the gym.
Yeah. Nope. That's 100% true. Do you have any recommendations for like books? Like if a woman wanted to like get some type of book, do you have a favorite weightlifting book or somebody that you'd like to follow? As far as if somebody said, I'd like to learn.
Again, these are probably because I haven't looked at, unfortunately, I haven't looked at books or something in a long time. But if you were telling me, because to be honest with you, the basics are the basics. They're not going to change. I would probably, especially if you're starting out, I would go back in time and pick up anything by Corey Everson.
Mm-hmm.
I know she has a lot of, in when she was first lifting, because she actually, I don't know if you know this, she actually went to Kutztown College.
Oh, she did.
Yeah, I actually, my ex-husband and I, he took me to listen to her and Jeff at the time talk. Yep, about women and weight training. Yes, she went to Kutztown. I would, or maybe she actually, what, let me backtrack on that. She might have just been doing the talking there, but she was at Kutztown, and so we went to listen to her. But a lot of her early books, they're just the basic weight training, how to get started, what exercises to do. I think sometimes now we've gotten, with all the different machines and stuff, I think sometimes we forget about the basics.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're just starting out, that would be my recommendation. And wherever you go, especially in the beginning, work with a trainer or work with a coach from the fitness center where you're going to go to, because I think the biggest thing, and I got this from like I said, from my ex-husband, because he was a power lifter. Even now, if I lift with somebody, they always comment on my form, because he drilled that into me. It was always about form and using proper body mechanics and stuff, you know what I mean, to get the most out of whatever I was doing. And I think that's the first thing that I would tell women that are just now, wanting to start into weight training for the first time, about picking up some of those basic books from some of the early writers, the early women that competed in the sport, because like I said, the basics are what's going to give you your foundation.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree with that.
And Corey was one of the best. I've known her for years, and I read so many of her books in the beginning and so many of her magazine articles and stuff, and she really had a good background on what was the right way to do things.
No, I agree. I loved her, and I just interviewed Toscarino not too long ago, so it was kind of fun talking to her about her and her husband and that whole thing, starting up with oxygen, but kind of the same thing. I mean, just they I think he was definitely old school. So,
but yeah, Corey is, like I said, if anybody even sees current pictures of Corey, I mean, she just looks amazing for her age. Just just a very down-to-earth person. But that's what I would do. I would actually go back and pick up some of her original books just on basic weight training. Like I said, just so that when you start out, you actually start out and use and learn the proper form for whatever exercises that you're doing.
Right. Right. Great advice. Great advice. So let me ask you something personal. What do you enjoy doing in your off time? Like what fills your tank? Do you have any hobbies?
I used to have a whole lot. They've gone by the wayside lately. Yes, gym taking on the international scene put a little crimp in my my retirement from nursing. But my husband and I like to travel to the islands. We haven't been as much as we've been. We both love to hike. I used to be an avid bike rider. I haven't been doing as much lately. And I'm an avid reader. I love to read and stuff. And whenever I get time, I love going home and spending time with my family. My sisters and I are very close. But basically, like I said, going to the islands and hiking. I love to hike. And actually, my husband and I are actually I'm going to take shooting lessons. I want to learn to shoot. So I've got some stuff that, on the agenda that I'm going to be trying for the first time.
Well, that's great. I'm all about that too. Just stepping outside of your comfort zone and stepping outside of the box.
Absolutely. And learning new, and trying new endeavors and learning new things again, no matter what age we are.
Right. So if you could go back and change anything in your life, would you do anything differently?
Yeah, I think knowing what I know now, I think when I first started to get into lifting, I wish there would have been, like coaches and somebody that could have actually helped me to get by that, because when I first started, I think I was really scared to gain, because just coming off of anorexia and stuff, I was so terrified of gaining weight back that I didn't allow myself to really, to go out of my comfort zone and actually allow myself to eat enough to actually put some muscle on. I would love to have gone back and seen what I could have done if I would have had, a proper coach or the proper training and the mindset, because that's what I would have had to change my mindset, knowing that, that I could gain the weight and then I could take it off healthy too.
Right. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I kind of feel the same way. When I was in high school, I was 5'10", I weighed 100 pounds, and I was literally a stick figure. And I ran cross country, I ran track, and back then I would just cry about it, but I didn't know anything about diet, and I just wasn't eating enough, and that was the whole problem. So yeah, I totally get that. Totally get that.
Yeah.
What's one thing today that you will not compromise?
Anything in my life?
Mm-hmm.
My judging is very important to me. Because I always know that there's, people talk, oh, there's this political thing. My judging, I take very pride in the years that I've judged, and how I've judged and stuff. And so that's one thing that if I didn't think the sport was true to judging, I'd walk away from.
Right. Well, and there's so many different, judges out there, and there's so many different styles. And I think the very first time that I ever encountered you, I did the Emerald Cup. And, being a flight attendant, I live in Charlotte, but, I had friends out there, and I thought, well, I'm just going to go out there. I had no idea that the show was that big or, whatever. But it was probably one of my I did the show 4 years in a row. It's one of my most top favorite shows. But what I loved is that when I came out on stage, you're a freaking nervous wreck, but, you were genuinely interested and smiling and showing that you cared. And I just felt so, at ease. But whereas I've been to some shows where, they kind of glance up and they're, writing things and they're not really paying any attention. And I'm just like, I've worked so hard. Just give me a minute,
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that's one of the things sometimes I think athletes just think that I'm saying it, but I am telling you, it amazes me where the quality of our, and again, obviously I'm a little more prejudiced toward the women, obviously I judge both, but, but where the quality of the female athlete in our organization has come. And that's why I have amazing hopes for this organization when I'm not around anymore, because, Jim Mannion's grandson has started to do a lot of the judging and stuff. And he is focused on judging as I am. And it's just so awesome to see somebody that young that is so committed, to the judging portion of our sport. And it's nice to see.
Well, and it's also for me as an athlete, it's nice to see that he has someone like you, that you literally are mentoring him, just because, I like your judging style is great and you're fair. And I just think that's awesome that he has someone like you by his side. So.
Well, and he does. He's got some really good mentors around him. Obviously, his grandfather, being the first and foremost. But it's also funny because we'll be sitting there judging, and after the first, year or so, all of a sudden I look over and, most of my male judges, they'll make a couple notes, but they don't, they don't take and he's like writing these extensive notes. And I looked at him and he looks at me and he goes, "Yes, Sandy, I'm taking after you. I'm taking a lot of notes." And I went, because again, he realizes that when you go to look at photos, they don't give you the complete picture. They don't give you that 3 dimension that you see on stage. And, and so he's very, oh yeah, absolutely. And so it just it makes me laugh.
That's great. Well, is there anything that you would like to say as we finish up this interview?
Yes. If you're an older woman, get your butts in a gym, get yourself outside, just start somewhere. Even if you've never done anything, again, I'm very partial, like I said, to the weight training, but even just to start walking outside, making that initial effort to do something, I'm telling you that it's like that vicious cycle. Once you start and you start to see the results, and if you've not done something for a while, those results will come quickly in the beginning, and they'll feed then on itself, and you'll want to do a little more, and you want to see yourself change a little bit more. But it's just making that first effort to get yourselves out there.
You're right. You're 100% right. Well, thank you so much for chatting. We've talked an hour. So.
Yeah, well, I told you in the beginning, Helen, talking is never a hardship. It's never a hardship for me.
But again, I just want to thank you so much for being able to take valuable time. I know that you're probably getting ready to hit the road again this week for another show. So
yeah, we have we have the Golden State up in Sacramento. We leave tomorrow morning for.
So I greatly appreciate you spending some time with me and letting my audience get to know you and your thoughts on fitness, especially for women over 40, 50, 60, and beyond.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So have a great evening, and hopefully I will catch up with you in person sooner than later.
Thank you and thanks for having me, Helen.
All right. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.